Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl. You only win a Super Bowl 2 times every 5 years, right? Oh! The warm-up act is over. Let's bring in Melissa Etheridge, massive Chiefs fan. Melissa.
Super Bowl champion, 2-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
And he picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna score! And we'll see you next week, but until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome into the Intangibles podcast, a new Arrowhead Addict podcast. My name is Bryce Carter, and I am joined by a good friend. It is Christian Ainsworth. Christian, it's been a long time coming, but how the heck are you, man?
Dude, I'm doing amazing, man. I'm out here in Colorado. It's beautiful. Escaping that Kansas City heat, man. It's been incredible. I've been out here for about a week now, and I'm not ready to come back, man. Hell, I might be a Broncos fan by the end of this week, man.
Whoa, that's a rough way to start a podcast, my friend. Especially when we're a new podcast. As someone just said, it's a new show. Who's this? We are very excited to be launching this new show on Arrowhead Addict stream. Arrowhead Addict has an awesome base. You've seen me around on some of the podcasts, especially around draft season. And, Christian, I think it'd probably be best if you kind of talk a little bit about what the Intangibles is and kind of what our goal is for this podcast.
Yeah, so Price and I met back at a different Chiefs media company about a few, what was that, maybe 3-4 years ago? Yeah, 2020. So we've known each other for a while, but we had our own podcast back then and kind of had a vision for it. I think this one, we're really looking to bring you some, I don't want to say conservative, but like reasonable Chiefs takes, combining that with statistical analysis, things like that, maybe a little bit of humor here and there. We'll see how that goes, though.
Yeah, and I think, talking about the analysis that we've done on our previous podcast, which we beg you, please don't dig up and find that previous podcast. We were growing, we were learning. There's some not great takes on there. But I think, one of the things that we really want to bring to this show and to the Arrowhead Addict lineup really is just kind of a more analytical, analysis-based approach. We're always going to lean towards the side of trust your eyes, see what you see. We're not going for hot takes, like you said. We're not going to sit here and bore you with, numbers that are going to make you fall asleep. But we want to take off those red and gold glasses. Sometimes when we look at the Chiefs roster, we look at things the way that we want to see them. We want to squint and see things the best that we can. And we've got lots of great shows here on Arrowhead Addict. Sterling and Matt Connor and Adam Best and Patrick and Matt Verderam. We've got a lot of really talented people here, and we've got a really great base. But we're going to try to bring something a little bit different as far as our analysis goes. I talked a little bit about the draft. That's a huge part of what I do here at Arrowhead Addict, draft throughout the year. So that way, when February hits, we're not just caught off guard by the draft. We'll be talking about some players that we're watching all along the way. We'll be doing some tape. We'll be talking about some all 22. I do some work for FTN, another site where I will get to watch all 22 and grade players. So we'll be talking about that all along the way. But we're really excited to get this going. And always a time that I want to start a podcast about the Chiefs. It's in the middle of July when they haven't played football in months and still won't play for months, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, like right now, if we've got shitty takes, we're putting them out. Like this is going to be the rough part. And if you can do a podcast right now, you can do it anytime, man. I mean,
yeah, we've reached the point of the offseason where like every day on Twitter, it's a new character that we're pretending is a victim, like a new player. Like lately it's been Lamar Jackson. Like I see all these like Lamar Jackson tweets about how, he's so underappreciated too. He's the worst player, It is peak offseason. It's definitely time to start the real football, but we're a few weeks away from camp. But we've not really talked Chiefs here, me and you, since the draft. So I wanted to just get your kind of analysis real quick. Obviously, we've had a whole offseason. It's going to be really tough to size it all up into one short bit. But tell me, kind of, if you could summarize what you thought of the Chiefs offseason from the free agent signings to the draft. If you could kind of summarize summarize it, how would you just?
If I was going to use one word to describe this offseason, I know I used textbook in our pre-draft or our pre-podcast meeting, but I think after hearing about all the other crazy things that have gone on this offseason, I think eventful might be a more appropriate word. The draft, trading up, getting Xavier Worthy, the weapon in the draft, was eventful. I mean, Twitter was going crazy when that happened. All the other offseason additions, eventful. Nothing incredibly crazy, but, trading L'Jarius Sneed, I would call that eventful. Not only that, but adding Hollywood Brown and all of the other offseason incidents the Chiefs have gone through. I mean, eventful seems like the most appropriate word I can think of.
I'm going to describe fast, and that goes a lot of ways, right? First off, you win the Super Bowl, and boom, like a week later, the combine has started. Free agency's just around the corner. It felt like the confetti was still falling as we were talking about what players were the Chiefs going to move on from and not. The Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed question. Then obviously there's been a huge emphasis on getting faster on this team, whether it be Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, even some players, Jared Wiley, who are bringing more explosiveness to the offense. And then, I mean, it's been fast in a couple ways that aren't so great. 19 miles an hour. That's been the story of a big part of the season too, is the inability to slow down life and live a little bit within the rules. So it's been a fast off season. It seems to fly by every year. And believe it or not, we're just a couple of weeks away from players walking down the hill in St. Joe. And we're going to spend some time talking about some training camp darlings today, some people that we think have potential to be the next Devon Key or other legends as such. And we're also going to be doing our on the roster. So this is a little project I like to do every year where we kind of analyze the 53-man roster or the probables for the 53-man roster and categorize them into buckets to kind of see how we think they stack up with other teams in the division, other teams in the NFL. But real quick, Christian, let me ask you a question. Chris Jones, 10.75 sacks. Or are you taking the over or the under?
Definitely the over, and I don't think it's a question. Honestly, George Karlaftis, it's going to be his third season. That's the most important season for a pass rusher. If you're somebody, you're turning it on in year 3. George Karlaftis is going to be incredible. Charles Omenihu, after he comes back, will be incredible as well. I think Chris Jones is going to get a lot of one-on-one matchups, and if I got an extra 100 laying around, that's where I'm putting it, dude.
See, I don't know. I think like we might actually get a slightly better version of Chris Jones this year as far as the run defense goes. I feel like that's the thing. Like if Chris Jones is playing for a contract or trying to stack up those big numbers, the sacks are there, but we might get a more complete version of him. But the 10.75 is such a good number. His sacks by year, 7.5, 15.5. So we eclipsed that number twice. I think smart money might be on the under. But maybe you've got an opinion. You think you've got the right number on that. There's even money on that number there at Caesars Sportsbook. And Caesars will cover you with the first bet up to $1,000. New customers will get a second chance bet up to $1,000 when you sign up with our promo code ARROW1000. Again, that is ARROW number 1000. That means if your first bet, you get your full wager return as a bonus bet up to $1,000. Caesars offers daily profit boost as well, as Caesars Sports Rewards credits on every wager can be redeemed for bonuses, sports tickets, and other VIP experiences. Signing up with our code ARROW1000 not only covers you for your first bet, but also gets you access to their fantastic rewards program. Look, we know you're playing in Kansas. Hopefully we'll be playing over here on the Missouri side too. If you're looking to join Caesars, go to download the app and register with our promo code ARROW, the number 1000, to make sure your first bet is covered. This offer is only available to new customers who are 21 ages and older and physically present in legal gambling states. Please remember to always gamble responsibly. Check the app for full terms of the offer to see if you qualify. So, Christian, we kind of hinted at our roster breakdown. We're going to go ahead and take a look at this. So we're not going to do the whole roster this time because that's a lot of players. We're going to focus on offense and special teams this time. And we're not going to go full through like everyone who's invited to camp because that's a lot of players. But we probably have a pretty good idea. I feel like me and you could probably sit down and name 60 players that are likely to make the 53-man roster and hit that nail on the head. There's a few French guys, but today we're going to be talking about these players and putting them into categories. So these categories, we've got 6 categories. We're categorizing players into blue chips. Those are your roster cornerstones. Those are the players that you are building your whole team around and are considered, superstars, long-term staples of the roster. Then we have above average starter. Those are players that you're really glad are on the roster, generally deemed good players that you're happy to have on there. Average starters, I always want to be careful when we say average starters. That does not mean bad. It just means that they are at expectation of your team. Obviously, contract goes into this a little bit too, right? What you get out of a player who you're paying $20 million a year is different than if they're a rookie. Then the next category is replacement level. These are players who are seeing starting level playing time or quite a bit of starting time, and you're looking to replace. A good example of that would have been like MVS last year. He was like a contributing starter and was playing starter snaps, but you wanted to replace him. Then we've got quality depth. These are players who are playing or who don't see as much time, and you're happy in a depth role. Now, if the role changes, they can start being overexposed. And then the last category, an important category, is incomplete evaluation. So all of our rookies are going to fall in there, and then some players that we might need to see more from them to know. Like Nico Remigio is a good example of that. Potential camp darling, Nico Remigio. The hype train is rolling on him, but we've only seen him in a few preseason games. We've liked what we've seen, but we've not seen him in NFL action. We've not seen him line up against top-level defense. We just don't know what to expect, so he's going to go in that category. So what we did is we went ahead and went through here and kind of made this roster activity already, and now we're going to go and kind of talk about which players fall into each category. And for those of you that are audio only, we'll read them, and if you're visual, you can follow along with us on the spreadsheet. So first off, where should we start? Should we start at the incomplete evaluations or the blue chips, Christian?
You know what? Let's hit incomplete evaluations last. I want to talk about these blue chip players.
Okay, so there should be 0 hot takes here. Blue chips: Patrick Mahomes, good at football; Travis Kelce, Creed Humphrey, Joe Thuney, and Harrison Butker is who we have as blue chips. Christian, any name really jump out at you there?
I mean, we're going with hot takes, right? Patrick Mahomes is good. That's kind of a hot take. He's fantastic. He's an absolute incredible player. Butker is another one of those guys that I think, not that Patrick Mahomes is underrated by any means, but Butker has been an insanely efficient kicker for the past, I don't know, how long has he been here? And I think he's going to keep that way for the next couple of years as well, maybe even longer. Other than that, though, I mean, this is like a solid 5 names. I don't think that there's anybody you could really argue at this point is up in that blue chip. Maybe Trey Smith. He's going to certainly get paid like a blue chip player in this upcoming offseason. But other than that, I think this is a perfect list.
Yeah, I think Harrison Butker, I think that might surprise some people because he is a kicker. Obviously, he only on special, but think about how big having a quality kicker can be, not just to playoff games, but making the playoffs, right? There's so much adversity in NFL games. The margin of victory is so close, especially whenever you play as many games as the Chiefs do. Having an absolute nails kicker has been huge for their success. There are so many games, especially in playoff games. You think about getting to the Super Bowl last year in the AFC Championship game. You think about the 13 seconds game. That's one of the most underrated part of that game is the big kick that Harrison Butker made. So, yes, he has been one of the best kickers. And honestly, I think he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory if he keeps getting these opportunities with big kicks. There's been a lot of great kickers. I know Justin Tucker is a great kicker. Harrison Butker already has more Super Bowls than him. He's got all 3 because he's been here for the whole time. And I think they're very close in field goal percentage, like career-wise too. So, and he's done all that in kicking outside too, in cold weather, in a not indoor. That's his case as well. I'd say the only thing that jumps out at me is obviously Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey are both on here. Both guys are set to be free agents at the end of. That's a big deal. Thuney is the one that I could see him sticking around long term. I'd be surprised if the Chiefs are able to keep their entire interior offensive line together after this year. So Joe Thuney, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, there's some decisions to be made there. The Chiefs historically have not kept centers. So let Mitch Morris go. They let Rodney Hudson go. I would love to see them keep Creed Humphrey. I definitely think he's, now that Jason the best center in the NFL, second. I have that strength there in the inside. I think it's helped them really kind of bridge the gap with some of their tackles. Something with. So, but yeah, great core of players here, and some players that still have some ascension left with Creed Humphrey. Let's move on to above average starter. This is a category that surprised me a little bit with how few players fell into this Patrick Mahomes effect. For our above average starter category, we only have Hollywood Brown and Trey Smith in this category. And I wanted to talk about Hollywood Brown a little bit. Do we need to be bonked a little bit when it comes to Hollywood Brown? I mean, I think we're like doing a lot of work here when it comes to what Patrick Mahomes can do with him. Is Hollywood Brown an above average wide receiver in your opinion, Christian?
We're doing a little bit of projecting. Let's be honest. I mean, his stats have been a little bit lackluster since he's been in the league. His only 1,000-yard seasons with the running back for quarterback and Lamar Jackson. So we're kind of projecting him to be a little bit more than what he's shown. I don't think that's unreasonable, honestly. He's coming in from having Kyler Murray to not necessarily being the number one receiving option on a team, but having the ability to work with Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City, this Andy Reid offense. I think that above average starter is a perfect spot for him. Now, there is one player I think you could make an argument for to make it into this above average starter, Rashee Rice, which I know is a little surprising considering he's been a mostly underneath wide receiver for the past year. But like, dude, I was looking at his stats the other day and the impact that he had. If I told you that him and Travis Kelce had, through their entire season from week 1 to the Super Bowl, they were, I think, within 50 yards of each other receiving and 2 or 3 touchdowns. I mean, the dude was an absolute superstar last year. And I think if you wanted to put him in the above average starter, you could, but I would be just a little hesitant based on his contested catch rate and, getting open down the field type of thing.
Yeah. Let's go to so with Hollywood, I think the biggest thing that we are whistling by, like if we're wrong about Hollywood Brown and most people's analysis of him, it's going to be because of health. He has kind of struggled to stay healthy. He's a smaller guy. He has missed quite a few games of the last couple of years, and that's part of the reason why we're footing in Arizona on top of Kyler Murray getting hurt. I did the countdown or the breakdown of it. I think they almost games together total in the 2 years that he was in Arizona between their injury streak. So that was obviously a big of him not landing there or not getting a contract there after being traded for a first round pick. And I think going back to taking off our red and gold glasses here, whenever I heard that the Cardinals were trading a first round pick for Hollywood, I thought it was hysterical. But that was because they traded a first round pick for a player that, was close to the end of this contract and it hadn't quite lived up to his draft. Him being here on a 1 year, I think it's like $8 to $12 million deal, depending on incentives. That's a much different deal. So above average, I think is really going to rely on his health. Going to Rashee Rice.
Hold on one second. That's a little bit of revisionist history there. I remember you talking up Hollywood Brown, saying if he had a real quarterback, he would be an all-star before he got traded. I do agree with you. First round pick was a little rich, but like, let's not pretend we weren't both like pretty excited about what he could be.
Oh yeah, I definitely makes the thing, right? I'm able to use the super it's a problem, and I think what we're going to do is going to be going to use offense. But I will say with into their offense. Turquoise Valdez for the off this year. Then I think that there's a real chance that would to the offense. I say I dislike him, but definitely do. him being on the team, and think that it's a good move long term for the team this year. For Rashee Rice, talking about him, I think I am shattered start. It's going to be the that was a part of this was to the ball anywhere that at do get the ball and his that they did a skills for knowledge. But I will say that limited, and if he takes a step and is able to be you, I think that would help. So be able to put average.
Oh yeah, and make no mistake, I'm not saying that he has the same exact impact as Travis Kelce, or that he was that instrumental in the Chiefs' run as Travis Kelce was, but no, just he's on a great trajectory. I think that if you put him in that above average starter category, you could be just a hair early. Not what's that line? Not late, but or maybe I'm just early. I'm not wrong. So definitely could be one of those guys that we see make a move into that above average starter category. Now, while I got you, I mean, let's go to this average starter category. Isaiah Pacheco, Rashee Rice, Noah Gray, Juwan Taylor. These are all guys that I think have the potential to move forward, maybe get into that above average starter category right now, but we can't exactly place them there yet. Isaiah Pacheco, another one of those guys you could make the argument for that above average starter, right? Just never had a 1,000-yard rushing season. I understand he's a late round draft pick and he's perfect for this offense. Do not get me wrong, but him being there, I just can't make that leap yet. Now he'll have an extended role with Jerick McKinnon being off of the roster. CEH might make that transition up as well. So we're kind of laying in wait there to see whether or not Isaiah Pacheco can make that move to the above average starter or even blue chip player. I know that's putting a lot on his plate considering he was seventh round pick last year, the year before. So definitely interested in seeing what he's doing. Another guy I would say has the ability to move up into that above average starter category is Juwan Taylor. I mean, it's not like he wasn't a penalty machine back in Jacksonville, but like, let's not pretend like the Chiefs looked at his film and said, nah, this is a bad player. We're going to pay, hundreds of millions of dollars to. Like, no, this is a guy that they looked at and said, hey, he fits the system. He fits the scheme. Now we haven't seen that translate yet, but he could absolutely be a guy that goes up into that above average starter category.
Okay, I am back. Sorry. Apparently I was having some technical issues. I'm not sure what happened there. Hopefully my sound is better. The chat will let us know. But yeah, like you were saying, Juwan Taylor, he's one of those guys that the big thing is the penalties, right? He has to clean those up. No matter how good of a player he is, if he's having those brutal amount of penalties, he's the most penalized player in the NFL last year, it's hard to ever look at him as anything other than average, especially with that contract. But the movement skills and how he played in the playoffs, there's certainly a path there for him to be above average. I wrote last year that I thought he was the player who had the most pressure on him of any Chiefs player. I know a lot of people thought that might have been controversial because like, oh, well, he's a free agent. How can he have all this pressure on him? He just got paid. But the penalties, that was a huge part of it. And living up to that contract is the other part of it. So we talked about Rashee Rice, Juwan Taylor. Let's do the Isaiah Pacheco thing real quick. This is one of those things that I end up feeling like a hater a lot. And Isaiah Pacheco, I think, has a lot of fans within the Chiefs kingdom and outside of the Chiefs kingdom too, because of his running style, not just the kid running in the shoe store with new shoes on thing that he does, like the way that he gallops, but also his physicality and the way he runs. But fill in the blank for me. Isaiah Pacheco is a top blank running back in the NFL.
like 15. I think that's reasonable. I mean,
I have to agree. I think for him to take, there's clearly a path for him to take the next step, but never had 1,000-yard season, never had more than 250 yards receiving in a season. And most of that receiving, when you go back and watch it, is checkdowns rather than routes being run by him. I think it's hard to put him any higher than that. His first year, he wasn't the starter the full time because he was a 7th-round rookie. What he did in coming in and being able to contribute down the Super Bowl, like they don't win the Super Bowl in 2022 or 2023 without him, because he brought an element to the run game they desperately needed, especially with Clyde Edwards-Helaire not living up to expectations and Jerick McKinnon fighting off injuries. But for him to take that next step into above average starter, I think we need to see him for a full season. He had some health issues. I think he missed 1 or 2 games last year. Might have been more than that. I'll have to look real quick. But for me, I just need to see him take the next step. I think that he could get into that above average starter territory. Some growth in the passing game would help as well, too. I think he's becoming a much better pass protector. It's very clear that Chiefs are confident in his ability because they are not bringing back Jerick McKinnon. At least they haven't yet. They're committed to Clyde being in that passing back role. So I think that above average starters or average starter is where he should be at this time.
Yeah. And like I was talking about earlier, I mean, there's a real possibility that CEH takes that step forward and kind of steals those passing downs. But other than that, I mean, his role should expand with Jerick McKinnon being off the table. And I hope to see him in that above average starter tier next year.
This comment here says never had 1,000-yard seasons. Well, he's had 1.5 seasons as a starter, and the Mahomes offense cut the kid some slack. And I do think that's fair. He's not been in the NFL very long. But I want to keep in mind that these above average starters that we're talking about, these are probably players that would be considered top 10 at their position. I think that that's pretty fair. Keeping in mind too, like Hollywood Brown, that one's a little bit unique because 2 or 3 wide receivers play on almost every play. So is Hollywood Brown a top 30 wide receiver in the NFL? Probably pretty close to there. Isaiah Pacheco, there's only 1 running back on the field. I think top 15 is fair, and it is early for him. These players, we moved them throughout the year and at the end of the year. So I think that there's a real clear path for Pacheco to step up into the next category, especially when you take into effect last year, his work was not easy for him. Teams did not fear the Chiefs down the field at all by the midway point. Worthy, bringing in Worthy and having Hollywood Brown and Hardman and Travis Kelce and Rashee Rice, all that is going to make Isaiah Pacheco's job easier behind what is a very good interior offensive line. So let's move on to a replacement level here. I don't really think any of these are super controversial. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Justin Ross, and Wanya Morris. There really shouldn't be any replacement level for Wanya Morris. I know like Sterling Holmes, his heart is crumbling hearing this because he's a big Wanya Morris supporter. However, again, this is off of what we've seen. He played, I believe, 3 games as a starter and mixed in a 4th. That Raiders game he was a big part of the problem why that offense was just not functioning at all, because he was just getting destroyed by Max Crosby and some of the other pass rushers by the Raiders. So I do think there's some room for growth there, but I also think Wanya Morris's role could change a lot here in the coming years with him possibly mixing in. I wouldn't be surprised if he's mixing in on the interior this year some. And if he's your swing tackle or your right tackle, I think that feels a lot better. But right now, as the season goes, I think most people would project him as the left tackle starter, in which case he's a replacement level player.
Yeah, and he was one of those guys that played with Creed over in Oklahoma. And I remember there was a lot of talk as soon as he declared for the draft that Oklahoma line coach was like, hey, if I had this kid for 1 more year, he just transferred for that past season. They're like, if I could have him for 1 more year, he could really be something special. And I think that's what the Chiefs kind of saw with him. Obviously, they had success with Creed and looked at him and valued their offensive line coach's opinions. So I think that he's absolutely another one of those kids that could step up and be better than average or better than replacement level, but we just haven't seen it yet.
Right. And if Wanya Morris came in and really, was awesome. I don't think that the Chiefs are spending a second round pick on Kingsley Suamataia. I understand that Jawan Taylor was less than stellar on the first year of his deal, but they're committed to him for at least 2 more years. So I think that tells you what the Chiefs were thinking a little bit too. And depth at the tackle position, the Chiefs are obviously very committed to it after the Buccaneers Super Bowl. So it does mean that they did that, but I do think that Wanya Morris's role right now as the projected left tackle starter, it has him at his replacement level. Real quick, let's do the thing. Pick one: Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney.
Kadarius Toney, not a question for me. That's
the correct answer. It's the correct answer. Look, here's the thing. I understand that the stock is at an all-time low, right? But I'm going to be like a member of Congress right now. I'm waiting for that stock to buy at its all-time low, and I'm going to buy some stock. And then it's just magically going to go up, but I won't have any legal ramifications. But that's another story. The reason is with Kadarius Toney is he was overexposed dramatically, right? He was not a wide receiver 1, not a wide receiver 2. He's maybe a wide receiver 3. But his ability with the ball in his hands is what makes him special. The biggest issue with him, Kadarius Toney has NFL traits that make him an impact player when he has the ball in his hands. When we're comparing him to Sky Moore doesn't have those traits. Sky Moore, there's some things to like about him, but he has no NFL trait that is dominant enough to help him win play after play against press corners, physical corners, or any sort of coverage that's more than just the third or fourth corner. And I think that if you're asking me what player can have a bigger impact on the roster this year, whether it be in special teams, screens, bubbles, as a running back, which is, one of the things that Tony's done well in the few opportunities he's gotten, I think Kadarius Toney is the player I would be higher on long term. Now, I understand that's pretty, a lot of people don't like hearing that.
So why is Ross in this category? Because looking here, we have CEH, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney, Justin Ross, and then Wanya Morris. Why is he in this category and Justin Watson isn't? Because if I'm looking at it from a what have you done for me lately perspective and not this offseason hype that we go into every offseason with, Justin Watson has been nothing if not consistent with his third down plays and his connection with Mahomes. The dude has just been incredible.
Well, I think that the reason why we ended up going more Toney Ross in there is because those are all probably like your 5th, 6th, 7th, or 6th, 7th, 8th wide receivers, and you would certainly like to upgrade them as far as role. Right now, Justin Watson's probably your wide receiver 3 or 4, depending on Rashee Rice's suspension status, and you're pretty happy with that. Same with McCole Hardman. McCole Hardman's probably wide receiver 4 or 5 in that same mix, and you're very happy with them as quality depth. Where if as long as they remain in that role where they're playing maybe 30 to 35% of the snaps, they have those few splash plays. It's very much kind of like McCole Hardman's playoffs was, right? 2 games into the playoffs, you were ready to pull his hair out because he's fumbling the ball and almost cost them the Bills game. But then the Super Bowl, he's like the big splash player. So that role there is what changes it. Whereas Moore, Toney, and Ross, I think all of us have asked the Chiefs, hey, we want better players at the bottom of this wide receiver core to raise the floor. We've raised the ceiling with players like Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice. We want to raise the floor so that way we never get what happened last time. And that's part of what killed the Chiefs last year. It's just that they had no adult in them for the wide receivers.
Yeah, and I think that's an important delineation to make when we're looking at these last 2 categories, right? Irv Smith is probably not going to come out and have 1,000 yards from the tight end position. It's just probably not going to happen. Same thing with Watson, same thing with Hardman. But these guys like Kadarius Toney, Justin Ross, these are guys who we haven't seen take that next step, but have the ability and hopefully this upcoming season, the opportunity to do so. So I agree 100%.
Yeah. Quality depth, we have Justin Watson, McCole Hardman, Irv Smith. It's never really worked for him full time as a tight end starter. But if you're 3rd or 4th tight end, you're pretty happy with that. Lucas Nying, I think, will be fighting for a roster spot this year. But again, he's probably your 4th or 5th tackle. That's fine. Carson Wentz, you like him as a backup quarterback. There's still some talent left there. You feel like he can win you 2 out of 3. You certainly don't want to be starter, but Andy Reid is really good at working with backup quarterbacks and finding what they do well. So that's most of the categories. Real quick, we're going to run over the incomplete evaluations. That's going to be all the draft picks. Again, we're just doing offense and special teams today. We'll go over defense next time. So incomplete evaluations: Xavier Worthy, Jared Wiley, Kingsley Suamataia, Hunter Norzad, CJ Hansen. We also have in there a few players. Matt Ariza, the new punter. He won the punting job. He will be the slotted punter for this year. Obviously, some really powerful leg punts there that he's had in college, but we just haven't seen it. Rees-Zammit, the Welsh rugby player. Deneric Prince and Nico Remigio. Those are all players that we think could factor into this roster, whether it be week 10 or some point, but we just don't have enough information to really categorize them. They could be all pros. They could be off the team before October. So that's going to do it for our roster breakdown. We'll cover the defense next time, and then we'll kind of look at how the roster stacks up. Where are the positions that we have the most blue chips? Where are the positions we have the most above average starters? And where are some potential risks? Where are some places that the Chiefs are weak at? But real quick, Christian, before we get out of here, we were just talking about training camp. Nobody loves anything more than a training camp darling. And I'm looking forward to getting up to St. Joe. I mean, you've hang out at St. Joe occasionally, get some delicious Cajun food out there at Boudreaux's. But we want to talk about some training camp darlings. So for me, my definition of a training camp darling is someone who there's little expectation of, right? This is a guy that you might just hear his name for the first time up at camp. And day one, you hear about him a little bit. Hey, this player flashed. Day two, they make an interception or they score a touchdown on a deep post. And by the end of the week, everyone's talking about them. And then like 2 or 3 weeks later, they're all locked. They're all locked to make the team, right? These are like the Devon Key. Last year was a little bit of Deneric Prince was that guy for a little bit, and then he cooled off in the preseason. But we've had these camp darlings that seem to be the talk of St. Joe. And I mean, we would be remiss if we don't admit founding father, training camp darling, Jody Fortson. It will always be Fort season in my heart, even though he's no longer on the team. So we're going to pick 3 candidates each that we think could be the camp darling. We'll revisit this and see who was right. Maybe one of us hits it on the head. So Christian, let's go first. Who is your first darling?
I'm going to cheat a little bit. It's a guy that I think has some expectation on him, but I don't think there should be a whole lot. But I think he could make some splash plays that, maybe kind of under the radar type of thing, but he could absolutely come out and have a starting position on the team. And that's Kingsley Suamataia. I know, first or second round draft pick. A lot of people had him mocked in the first. That's a little tough, but to me, he was so raw coming out of UCLA that, having him start, I think a lot of draft analysts thought, if he's your starter left tackle going into the season, you're in some trouble. I mean, there are plenty of veterans that can come in and take that position and provide, a floor that maybe Kingsley doesn't have right now. But I think he's got the connections with Andy Reid and that UCLA. I think that he has the athletic ability and those traits where if he flashes, people are going to start talking about him like they talked about Justin Ross last year, except he might actually produce.
I don't know. Like I said, the sun pick here's what I'll say. We're going to know real quick on Kingsley Suamataia and what they think of him. Typically, right when they break camp, the offensive line that runs out there the first time, those starters, a lot of times those guys are the players that line up week one. Donovan Smith was left tackle last year in that original practice. So if it's Kingsley, that's a good sign. And there are a lot of things that I think people will like about him. One, physically, he's such an impressive specimen. He was the 4th player on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list, which is a huge list of some of the best athletes in college football. And the whole Andy Reid BYU connect. He seems like a really great kid. I think he just got married. I saw on Instagram. So that was part of the reason why he left Oregon for BYU, is to be closer to his girlfriend and his family. So I could see some of those things. But it's hard to be flashy. It's hard to be flashy. You don't score touchdowns as an offensive tackle very often, maybe once a career. So I am going to go to the defensive side of the ball. And this is a player that I'm really excited about. I think he's going to flash a lot, and especially because of special teams and the changes that are coming into it. And it's Curtis from Penn State. He's a former 5-star, always love the former 5 stars. It means they got traits for days. He was a safety in high school, so this is kind of giving off some Dorian O'Daniel vibes. He's 6'1", 241 pounds, had a relative athletic score of 9.7, so a 91% athlete, really good. He was Dane Brugler's 10th overall linebacker prospect in this draft. He's a will backer, so he's going to he could kind of fill the Willie Gay role a little bit. Dane Brugler comped him to like a poor man's Terrell Bernard from the Bills. Here's the thing. If you ask Curtis Jacobs to fill the run against an offensive lineman, he's gonna lose. Okay, he's just smaller, he's undersized. But if he's used in the right ways, where he's covering running backs out in the flat, if he's put in positions where he can use that athleticism that he has, he's a splashy player. He's made some great plays against good level competition. One of his best plays of the year came against Ohio State, where he sacked the quarterback, stripped the ball, picked the ball up, and run it back for a pick six. Like, it was just basically like a house call on his own. And then the special teams, I think that, this year right now, they don't really have another linebacker that is pushing them for playing time. Besides, now that Willie Gay is gone, they've traditionally kept 4 or 5 linebackers. I think Curtis Jacobs could mix in there and be a player that this time in a couple of weeks we're considering a roster lock.
Yeah, absolutely. And at a position of need as well. Like you talked about, Willie Gay is no longer on the roster. It is Nick Bolton, Drew Tranquil, and Leo Chanel, and then a bunch of guys. So the opportunity's there, the athleticism, the talent is there. I think that not a bad bet, dude. I like it.
Yeah, and I think, like, you've got Nick Bolton. If Nick Bolton gets hurt, you've got Drew Tranquil, who can fill in at the mic. Leo Chanel is the hammer looking for the nail. He's the Sam. And then you've got Jacobs there, who can mix in as the backup Will if anything happens to Tranquil. So if you put him on the field with Leo Chanel, you're not afraid of him being overexposed when it comes to like big power blocking. So yeah, he's someone that I'm excited about, and I think Chiefs fans really like too. And I mean, it's the Penn State thing, right? They're players, they just test like crazy. I don't know what's in the water out at Happy Valley, but they're always great combine warriors. So all the skills there, just a little undersized. Christian, who's next for you?
I can't quit him. Justin Ross. He's just been that guy, stays that guy. What else even is there to say about him? I mean, like, every offseason, it's Justin Ross watch. It's, hey, look at this guy making incredible plays. I understand that when he was at Clemson, he kind of fell off in those last couple of years, but the dude is a stud. And we're at a position now, I really would have liked to have seen him take that step forward last year. But somebody who could step in to that Justin Watson role of, like, line up at the X sometimes and be a third down, demon. Somebody, third and Juan Jennings, like that type of guy who can just be open consistently in the right place. I think he's got plenty of people in front of him, so that's going to be a little bit difficult for him to actually make the roster and make an impact. But, like, dude, what's there to hate about him? He's got the talent. He's got the stats.
I'm like 90% of the way out on Justin Ross.
Oh,
okay,
no
like
way, dude. Come on.
Like, here's why. Okay, I tweeted this, like, I need to get a memento tattoo on my like arm or my back or something that says something along the lines of Chiefs don't throw the ball to a contested catch, guys. They just don't do it. So next time you're sitting there and you're reading the draft or it's free, and so you're like, hey, like Mike Williams might make some sense. Just don't. They don't throw the ball to those guys. It's a Patrick Mahomes thing. It's an Andy Reid guy thing. They want guys who can separate and create space, and that's just not been Justin Ross's game. So whenever you find yourself saying like, oh, maybe they get a big go up and get a guy, a contested catch weapon in the red zone, it's never been something they've really used that well. And I think with Ross, part of the thing is it's the injuries, right? That's been a big part of what has limited him. He's not been injured with the Chiefs. Well, I guess he was. That's part of the reason why his rookie season was basically just a redshirt year. Some off the field issues too this year. The one thing I will say for him is that if he is going to make the team and make an impact on the team, this will be the year. Last year functioned as his rookie year. They have a need at the X position. That is one of the things I've talked about and written about, is that the Chiefs lost quite a bit of roll with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. They didn't lose much production because of how much he struggled, but his ability to be the blocking wide receiver, his ability to line up on the outside and fill that role. If Justin Ross can step into that role, he has the size. He is a more stereotypical X as far as size goes. He's not a guy you're going to be putting in the slot. The Chiefs have plenty of those guys anyway. So if it's going to happen, it's a squat or get off the pot type of year for him. So we'll see how that goes.
Let me add just one more thing to that, because I think Travis Kelce being a little bit older, a little bit longer in the tooth, I think we could see him take kind of a step back, not necessarily in athleticism or production, but just in the amount of snaps that he's playing. I think that they could really shorten him up, and that's a perfect spot. Put him out there on the Y, be absolutely incredible out there.
I tell you what, when the people cash their Justin Ross stock and Justin Ross is catching touchdowns, like, props to you, because you've held on to that ticket for a long time. You deserve to cash it. For me, speaking of like needing to be bonked, because I'm too hot for stuff right now. Rees-Zammit is my next Camp Darling. This guy has all the intangibles. First off, he's handsome. Okay, the man is handsome. Good accents. He's British. That helps, man. The ladies, they love football. They love Chiefs football too. And he is still 23 years old. I had it in my head that he was older than that because he was a signing that was an international signing, but he's the same age as most draft picks. He's 6'3", 195 pounds. And man, have you seen the training camp, the hype on social media around him? The Chiefs are tweeting out content of him all the time. Like, if they're tweeting out OTA highlights, he's guys in it. The social media team is driving the hype up for this guy. When was the last time they've done this for a player? Like, Justin Ross hype was big, but like LRZ hype is even bigger. The Reese Lightning, he's going to fun. They're tweeting about him going to Worlds of Fun. I mean, this is the hype is out of control for Rees-Zammit. He has to make an impact, right?
I mean, I'm happy you said that, because I did notice that. I was scrolling Instagram the other day and I'm like, dude, another Zammit post by the Chiefs? Dude, what the hell's happening? Like,
they're bonking us. They're telling us, like, calm down, okay? Like, they're driving it. They're driving the machine.
This could be like the Chiefs media team being like, let's grab all these international guys. Like, they love rugby. This guy's gonna come in. We can, kind of piggyback, get in on some of that fandom. But like, dude, honestly, I kind of like that pick. Like, the need is there. Deneric Prince is going to be an option there for the third running back spot. But other than that, I mean, it's wide open. We got guys that we need on special teams. Like, the new kickoff rule might be interesting for him. He might be like a kickoff demon or god for some reason. Like, he has the talent. I mean, we'll see. I hope you're right.
To be clear, I think his role is going to be special teams. They've some of the mini clips that they have posted of cutting it looks like a battleship trying to like make a turn. Like, his hips, they just don't move in rugby like they do in the NFL. Part of it is that they can't get tackled with the ball in their hands. They like lateral it. Now, he's going to be a very good form tackler, and that's actually where I think his role would be. Yes, potential to kick the ball. I know that they've talked about that. Potential to run the ball. He's got great straight line speed. He's clocked at 24 miles an hour. That's without pads, remember. But I mean, that's extremely fast. And a core special teamer. Like, if he can, be a gunner on punt coverage, if he can help in kickoff return and kickoff coverage, like if he can be that true like Matthew Slater type of full special teams contributor, then yes, the Chiefs have used players like that. Marcus Kemp. Throw in the fact that he's still young and all the international hype for him. I could see it. Training camp darling for sure. Running back that's going to be worth rostering in fantasy, I don't think so. Like, I think he's like maybe 2 to like 5 manufactured touches a year type of guy. Like, we get him on end around, just run straight and fast. Here's the blocking lane. That's the only thing I could see for him offensively this year.
I would love to see him and Travis Kelce do some type of lateral stuff. Kelce's always looking to lateral. That would be so much fun to watch. Like, yeah, I that highlight on ESPN for 6 weeks straight. Like,
I've been going back and watching old Chiefs playoffs games just kind of on YouTube throughout the year as I work, and there's one where like Kelce like laterals the ball like 3 times in a game, and it's like, what the heck? Stop, man! Like, calm down. But yeah, I could see that. All right, who's your last camp darling?
Last one. UCLA, this time actually from UCLA, not that BYU nonsense.
I wasn't going to correct you. But
dude, I felt so bad. You said BYU. I was like, dude, I'm an idiot. Wow. How could I forget that Andy Reid's from BYU?
Cover our bases.
No, UCLA running back Carson Steele. Position of need, definitely somebody who we could see on the roster and kind of fits like that niche fullback role where you give it to him short yardage. I know we don't like doing that with Isaiah Pacheco, especially on 3rd and short. But dude, this guy is a wrecking ball. I think he's 6 foot, around 220 pounds, like an absolute unit. Pretty good RAS as well. Didn't have a whole lot of production at UCLA, but I mean, you watch him run and you look at the measurables, you go, okay, he's got something there. You look at him run, you go, dude, if I was a linebacker coming downhill, like I might go for an ankle tackle, but I'm not going straight up with that kid. I mean, the dude is a beast, and the Chiefs need somebody like that for short yardage. I know we like Zammit, but maybe one of those guys we stash away, and then set week 7, 8, 9, 10, we need somebody to step in, and he's that guy.
Carson Steele is like the other best answer, I think, to this question. First off, he looks like Thor, like the god of thunder, flowing locks. He has a pet alligator, apparently. Adam Best found that great tweet that he has a pet alligator or something. He's a big guy. He's going to kind of fill into that fullback role, which is something that, a lot of classic football people love. And I think that there's reason to believe in him. He had over 1,500 yards at Ball State, granted, before he transferred to UCLA, but he's been productive before. Here's my thing, and I understand why it's challenging. I feel like there are 1 to 2 running backs every class that we say this player coming out of college is an NFL-ready pass blocker. The rest of them, it's all in their notes. It's all in the analysis of like, they're not ready to be a pass blocker for a running back. Please bring Carson Steele in. And from day one, just get him with someone who is a good pass blocking back or someone who's good at coaching it and teach him that one skill. And just be like, look, you don't let anybody touch Patrick Mahomes and just work on it all camp. And then we can work on getting you the ball in short yardage situations. If he can just do that and be a good pass protector in the backfield, I would feel great about his chance of making the roster. Because, yes, he can do some fullback type of things. If him and Pacheco are on the field at the same time, you have a nice little thunder and lightning combination there. And then, the Chiefs, they've used Michael Burton, they've used Anthony Sherman over the years in different roles. I think that's effective. And a lot of the best offenses in the NFL still use a fullback. Patrick Ricard in Baltimore, Kyle Juszczyk and the San Francisco. So there's a lot of really talented fullbacks in there. That's what I want. I just want someone to come in, be a quality pass protector, skill. I could completely see it, especially, like I said, the flow in locks, the pet gator, the hype is real.
You got to stop talking about the dudes, man. I mean, respectfully. I mean, I understand he looks like Thor. He might be a dreamboat. We got to see him on the field, man.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing. Like, this is the darling, right? Like, it's more than just the field, what's on the field, right? You got to have the aesthetic. You know what I'm saying?
Look good, play good.
Look good, play good. Or you have like some like charming trait. Like, you remember Cody Mock? He's a guard for the Buccaneers. He's got red hair. He's got a mullet. He's missing teeth. He's like a video game character, like something you would make in Madden or something. But he got all this hype around him because he looks like the most stereotypical offensive lineman ever. And he's a pretty decent guard. So you just got to have a certain like vibe to you, a look. Okay, my last one. This one, Fabian Lovett from Florida State. Fabian Lovett, he is, first off, I think he stands a chance to be a training camp darling because of the role. If there's one position that I feel like the Chiefs are the weakest at, it's interior defensive line. They've brought in a lot of bodies. There's a lot of people there, but not a lot of accomplishment, not a lot of highly ranked players other than Chris Jones, obviously. Derek Nottie is definitely on the downslope of his career. Mike Pennell played like a god in the Super Bowl, but he's not been playing full seasons for quite some time. What can they expect from him? I think that Fabian Lovett, first off, he's 6'3", 316 pounds. One thing that like part of the reason why he didn't get drafted is he's been in college the entire Chiefs dynasty. He started his freshman year where he redshirted was in 2018. This man has been in college longer than as long as Patrick Mahomes has been a starter. However, there are some things that you can really like about him. He is super flashy I think besides him, Rick Wharton would probably be the best interior pass rushers the Chiefs have right now. as far as interior defenders. He was a team captain. He had 6 sacks in his time at Florida State, 14 tackles for a loss. He has that NFL frame, like I said, 6'3", 316 pounds. He has better flashes than consistency, though. So in the first couple of years Florida State, he was used like predominantly as a starter, played starter level snaps, and he struggled. Just, sometimes he would really get washed out in the run game, or he'd go up against a guard who really had his number and he was just quiet the whole game. But in the later years, with the new regime that came into Florida State, that great team that just went undefeated, he was used more in the rotational role and had a much more success. I think there's a real chance that he makes the team. The reason why he's my third, my least likely, is because I think, interior defensive line, again, it's just not a very sexy position. But this could be a player that ends up making the team and beats out some players that we might be surprised by. The Chiefs have not made a ton of moves at this position. Neil Farrell, like I said, they brought in Mike Pennell, they brought back Derek Nottie. They basically brought back everyone who was on the roster last year, position that they needed to get better. And with teams like the Chargers gearing up to run the ball a whole lot, the Bills are going to be more committed to that than ever. I do think that is a spot that they need some growth and development. So Fabian Lovett is my last camp darling.
Yeah, honestly, great pick. Like FSU guy, really long arms. What is he? 6'4", almost 250 pounds. Like, dude's a stud.
Yeah.
Like, definitely somebody who, when they're walking off the bus, is like, oh, we got to play that guy. Okay. All right. Well,
yeah. And it helps that there's not a lot of people in front of him that I think are really going to challenge him. So.
Oh yeah. Well, and having Joe Cullen as your D-line coach coming out of college, I mean, like FSU is known for its defensive linemen. Like, you're going to transition from FSU to the NFL with Joe Cullen as your defensive line coach. I think that will be a perfect transition for him. Maybe a stash player. We could kind of see him, make the practice squad and then step up maybe in a year or two. But like, dude, stud, man.
Speaking of transitions, that's going to transition us to the end of the show. We really appreciate you guys joining us for our first episode. If you liked what you heard here, or maybe this is your first Arrowhead Addict podcast that you're listening to, be sure to like and subscribe or leave a rating if you're on Spotify or iTunes. We've got a lot of great shows here. Right now, we have a top 50 Chiefs all-time project that's going on with Matt Connor, Patrick Allen, Sterling Holmes, Adam Best. It's a great show. Great listen. I was listening to it while I was mowing the other day. Really great way to kill the offseason as you're waiting to ramp up. And we're going to be ramping up our coverage all season long. We're really putting a lot into our podcast this year. We're going to be in this time slot for the rest of the season and into the off season. Mondays at 2, you can expect to hear the Intangibles. You can find me on Twitter at Price A Carter. You can find Christian at what is it? I can't remember it.
C_edits. It's going to change here pretty soon, so try to catch me there.
Oh, don't tempt us. Don't tease us like that. Okay. Well, thank you to producer Richard. We appreciate all of you guys. Thank you for listening. And for now, that's going to be it from us. As always, go Chiefs.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.